Audie Murphy, the soldier who refused to quit. What if I told you that America's most decorated war hero was rejected by the military 3 times before he could even enlist? A boy who stood barely 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighed only 110 pounds, and came from a family so poor they lived in a shack without electricity. The same boy who would go on to kill over 240 enemy soldiers, earn 33 medals including the Medal of Honor, and single-handedly hold off an entire German company while standing on top of a burning tank destroyer that could explode at any moment. This is not fiction. This is the true story of Audie Leon Murphy, a man whose courage was forged in poverty, sharpened in desperation, and proven on the bloodiest battlefields of World War II. By the end of this video, you'll discover why Hollywood itself came calling, why his grave at Arlington National Cemetery receives more visitors than almost any other, and how a sharecropper's son became an American legend. Stay with me, because this story would change how you understand what true bravery really means. Part 1. The Making of a Warrior. Childhood and Early Life. The story of Audie Murphy doesn't begin on a battlefield in Europe. It begins in the dirt-poor fields of Hunt County, Texas, on June 20th, 1925. Audie was born into a world of struggle that most of us today cannot even imagine. He was one of 12 children born to Emmett and Josie Murphy, though tragically only 8 would survive infancy. The Murphy family were sharecroppers, which meant they didn't own their land. They worked someone else's fields in exchange for a small portion of the crops and a place to live. That place was hardly worthy of being called a home. It was a ramshackle wooden shack with no electricity, no running water, no indoor plumbing. There were no books, no magazines, no radio for entertainment. The floor was bare dirt in some places. When winter came, the family huddled together for warmth, and when summer arrived, the Texas heat made the small structure feel like an oven. Food was scarce. The children often went to bed hungry, their stomachs cramping from emptiness. Audie's childhood was defined by 2 things: poverty and work. From the moment he could walk, he was expected to contribute to the family's survival. He picked cotton in the scorching Texas sun alongside his brothers and sisters, their small hands bleeding from the sharp bowls. The work was backbreaking, endless, and paid almost nothing. But there was no choice. It was either work or starve. Yet even in this desperate situation, something remarkable was developing inside young Audie Murphy. When he was around 8 or 9 years old, he discovered he had a gift that would one day save his life and the lives of countless American soldiers. He could shoot. Not just adequately, but with supernatural accuracy. It started with a slingshot. Audie would practice for hours, targeting birds, cans, anything that moved. He developed razor-sharp hand-eye coordination and reflexes that seemed almost superhuman. Then one day, he got his hands to a .22 caliber rifle. That's when everything changed. Audie took to that rifle like he had been born holding it. He could hit a running rabbit at 50 yards. He could drop a squirrel from a tree branch with 1 shot. His siblings and neighbors watched in amazement as this small, quiet boy became one of the most accurate marksmen they had ever seen. But Audie wasn't hunting for sport. He was hunting to feed his family. The meat he brought home, squirrel, rabbit, occasionally a deer, was often the only protein his brothers and sisters would eat that week. Hunting wasn't a hobby, it was survival, and Audie took it seriously. He learned to move silently through the scrubland, to read animal tracks, to predict where his prey would go. He learned patience, discipline, and the calm focus required to make a kill shot when there were no second chances. These skills, learned out of necessity in the forests of Texas, would later make him one of the deadliest combat soldiers in American history. But life was about to get even harder for the Murphy family. Audie's father, Emmett, was not a stable man. He struggled with alcohol, had a terrible temper, and could not handle the crushing weight of poverty. He abandoned the family several times, disappearing for days or weeks, leaving Josie how to somehow feed and care for 8 children on her own. Audie watched his mother work herself to exhaustion, her health deteriorating year by year. Then, in 1940, when Audie was just 15 years old, Emmett Murphy left for good. He walked away from his wife and children and never came back. Years later, Audie would say with barely concealed anger, "I hate anyone who quits." That abandonment burned into his soul. It created in him a fierce determination to never give up, no matter how impossible the odds. If his father was a quitter, Audie would be the opposite. He would fight, no matter what. But the worst blow was yet to come for the Murphy family. In May of 1941, when Audie was just 16 years old, Josie Murphy died. She had been sick for months, her heart weakened by years of poverty, malnutrition, and overwork. Audie was at her bedside when she passed. He watched the woman who had held the family together, who had somehow kept them alive through impossible circumstances, take her last breath. It destroyed him. For weeks afterwards, Audie was almost catatonic with grief. He barely spoke. He barely ate. His mother had been his hero, the toughest person he had ever known, and now she was gone. With both parents effectively gone, the Murphy children were scattered. Some went to relatives, some went to orphanages. The family was torn apart. Audie, now the man of the house at 16 years old, tried to keep his brothers and sisters together, but it was impossible. He was forced to watch his brothers and sisters be taken away, knowing there was nothing he could do. It was in this moment of absolute desperation that Audie Murphy made a decision that would change his life forever. He would leave Texas. He would find a way out. And when Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7, 1941, and America entered World War II, Audie saw his chance. He was only 17 years old, but he walked into a recruitment office with his jaw set and his mind made up. He was going to become a soldier. Part 2. Rejection and Persistence. When Audie Murphy walked into that recruitment office in 1942, he believed he would be accepted immediately. After all, the country was at war. They needed every man they could get, right? Wrong. The Marine Corps recruiter took one look at Audie and shook his head. "Son, you're too small and too light. We can't take you." Audie tried to argue, but it was no use. The Marines had standards. He didn't meet them. Fine, Audie thought. He would try the Army paratroopers. They were the elite, the toughest of the tough. Surely they would see his potential. But the airborne recruiter had the same response. "You're too small, kid. Go home." Audie tried the Navy. Rejected. 3 attempts. 3 rejections. For many young men, that would have been the end of it. But Audie Murphy was not like most young men. He had learned from his mother's strength and his father's weakness that quitting was not an option. If the military wouldn't take him as he was, then he would change. For the next few months, Audie dedicated himself to one goal: gaining weight. He ate everything he could get his hands on: bananas, milk, whatever food he could afford. He worked out constantly, doing push-ups, lifting whatever he could find. Slowly, painfully, he added pounds to his frame. Then he did something that would have been illegal by today's standards. His older sister helped him falsify his birth certificate to show that he was 18 years old instead of 17 years old. Armed with this document and a few extra pounds on his frame, Audie returned to the recruitment office in Dallas. This time, on June 30th, 1942, he was accepted into the United States Army. Audie Murphy was finally a soldier.
Part 3. Becoming a Warrior. Basic Training and Deployment. Basic training should have been where Audie Murphy struggled. He was still smaller than almost every other recruit. He didn't have the formal education most of them had. He had never been away from Texas. But something unexpected happened. Audie thrived. On the rifle range, he outshot everyone. It wasn't even close. The marksmanship instructors were stunned. This kid from Texas could hit targets they could barely see. He earned the expert marksmanship badge with both rifle and bayonet. But there was something else about Audie that set him apart. He was calm under pressure. While other recruits panicked during training exercises, Audie remained ice cold. He followed orders instantly. He never complained. And when they ran obstacle courses or marched for miles, Audie, despite his small size, never fell behind. His company commander noticed. Impressed by his performance, the commander tried to assign Audie to a safe job at the Post Exchange, a store on the base. It would have been comfortable work, far from danger. Audie refused. "I joined the army to fight," he said simply, "not to work in a store." The commander tried again during advanced infantry training at Fort Meade, Maryland. Again, Audie refused. He wasn't interested in safety. He wanted combat. In early 1943, Audie Murphy shipped out to North Africa with Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. He was finally going to war. He was 18 years old. Part 4. Baptism by Fire, North Africa, and Sicily. Audie Murphy's first taste of combat came in Tunisia, North Africa, in the spring of 1943. The heat was unbearable, the desert landscape brutal and alien to a boy from Texas. But Audie adapted quickly. His first kill came during a patrol. He and his squad were moving through a rocky area when they spotted 2 Italian officers trying to escape on white horses. The officers were fleeing, clearly trying to avoid being captured. Audie raised his rifle, took careful aim, and fired twice. Both officers fell from their horses, dead. His platoon leader was disturbed. "Why'd you do that?" he asked. Audie's reply was cold and matter-of-fact. "That's our job." It was a chilling moment, but it revealed something essential about Audie Murphy. He understood war in a way that many citizen soldiers did not. This wasn't a game. This wasn't about glory. It was about killing the enemy before they killed you. And Audie was very, very good at it. But war took its toll. Audie contracted malaria in Sicily and was hospitalized for several weeks. When he recovered, there were efforts to transfer him to another unit. Audie fought against it tooth and nail. "My place is with my men," he insisted. He returned to Company B just as they landed at Salerno, Italy. It was in Italy that Audie Murphy began his transformation from soldier to legend. Part 5. Rising Through Blood, Italy Campaign. The Italian campaign was brutal. The terrain was mountainous, the weather was terrible, and the German defenders fought with savage determination. Men died by the dozens every day. Companies that went into battle with 150 men came out with 50. But Audie Murphy not only survived, he excelled. On one patrol, his unit was ambushed by 8 German soldiers. Several Americans were wounded and pinned down by heavy fire. Audie didn't hesitate. He rushed forward alone, his carbine firing, grenades flying from his hands. He killed 4 Germans outright and wounded the other 4, then dragged his wounded comrades back to safety. 2 days later, his platoon was pinned down again, this time by perfectly camouflaged Germans hiding in a stream bed. No one could see them. No one could advance. They were stuck. Audie crawled forward on his belly, inching through the dirt and grass. He spotted the Germans, fired careful aimed shots, killing 2 of them. Then he called in mortar strikes, adjusting the fire with deadly precision. By the end of the engagement, 15 German soldiers were dead and 35 were wounded. The position was taken. For these actions, he received the Bronze Star with V device for valor. But he was just getting started. During one particularly fierce engagement, several men in Audie's unit were pinned down by German fire from a hilltop pillbox. Audie charged up the hill alone, killing 2 Germans at close range. Bullets whizzed past his head. He ran back down the hill, grabbed a machine gun and ammunition, then ran back up the hill. He did this several times, each trip a potential death sentence. When a sniper killed one of his friends, his face went cold. He hunted down and killed 2 German snipers. Then he wiped out the entire pillbox, clearing the hill of every remaining German soldier. For this audacious action, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration in the United States Army. And he was promoted to second lieutenant. Audie Murphy, the poor kid from Texas who had been rejected by every branch of the military, was now an officer. Part 6. Operation Dragoon and Southern France. After the D-Day invasion of Normandy in June 1944, Allied forces launched a second invasion of France in August, called Operation Dragoon. Audie Murphy's 3rd Infantry Division was part of this assault, landing on the beaches of southern France. The fighting was intense. The Germans, though retreating, fought fiercely to delay the Allied advance. Audie's company was constantly under fire, pushing through one town after another. During one engagement, Audie's unit was pinned down by German fire from a heavily fortified position. Once again, Audie took matters into his own hands. He grabbed a machine gun, climbed to an exposed position, and lay down suppressing fire while his men advanced. Then, he charged the German position himself, killing multiple enemy soldiers and forcing the rest to retreat. In another action, Audie trailed a reconnaissance patrol because, in his words, "I thought I'd see some action." The patrol was ambushed and several Americans were wounded. Audie rushed forward, shooting his carbine and throwing grenades with terrifying accuracy. He killed 4 Germans and wounded 4 more, then helped carry the wounded Americans back to safety. His reputation was growing. Soldiers in other companies began to hear stories about the small lieutenant from Texas who seemed to have no fear. Officers began to request him for dangerous missions because they knew he would get the job done. But Audie paid a price for his bravery. He was wounded for the first time during the southern France campaign, hit by shrapnel in his leg. He was sent to a field hospital, but he complained bitterly. "My place is up there beside them," he said, referring to his men. Within days, against medical advice, he returned to combat.
Part 7. The Frozen Hell, Colmar Pocket, and the Medal of Honor Action. By January 1945, World War II had reached a critical phase. The Germans, desperate and surrounded, launched a massive counteroffensive known as the Battle of the Bulge. Though the Allies eventually pushed them back, the fighting was savage and the casualties horrific. Audie Murphy's 3rd Infantry Division was sent to the Colmar Pocket in eastern France, a bulge in the Allied lines where German forces still held ground. It was the middle of winter. Snow covered everything. Temperatures plummeted below freezing. Men's hands and feet went numb. Weapons jammed in the cold. On January 26, 1945, 2nd Lieutenant Audie Murphy was commanding Company B near the small French village of Holzwihr. His company had taken position near a forest, preparing to hold the line. Then the Germans attacked. 6 German tanks, including at least 1 massive Panther tank, rolled toward the American position, followed by waves of German infantry. There were over 250 enemy soldiers advancing through the snow. Audie immediately ordered his men to fall back to defensive positions in the woods. "Get to cover," he shouted. "I'll cover your withdrawal." As his men retreated, Audie grabbed a radio and began calling in artillery strikes, trying to slow the German advance. Shells exploded in the snow, but the Germans kept coming. An American M10 tank destroyer, a vehicle armed with a powerful anti-tank gun, was positioned near Audie. Suddenly, it was hit by German fire. Flames erupted from the engine. The crew bailed out, running for their lives. The tank destroyer was burning intensely, and everyone knew it could explode at any moment. The fuel tanks, the ammunition, everything could go up in a massive fireball. What happened next is almost unbelievable.
Audie Murphy climbed onto the burning tank destroyer. Think about that for a moment. A vehicle that could explode at any second, flames pouring from it, enemy tanks and 250 German soldiers advancing toward him. And Audie Murphy climbed on top of it and manned the .50 caliber machine gun mounted on the turret. The .50 caliber machine gun is one of the most devastating weapons in the American arsenal. It fires rounds that can tear a human body in half. And Audie Murphy, standing fully exposed on a burning vehicle, began firing it into the advancing German infantry. German soldiers fell in waves. Audie's aim was perfect. He fired in controlled bursts, sweeping the machine gun back and forth. Germans tried to take cover behind trees, in ditches, anywhere they could, but Audie kept firing. The German tanks fired at him. Shells exploded around him. Machine gun bullets whipped past his head. But Audie didn't move. He kept firing. For over an hour, Audie Murphy stood on that burning tank destroyer and held off an entire German company by himself. He killed over 20 German soldiers. Some estimates put the number higher. He wounded dozens more. The German attack stalled. The infantry stopped advancing, pinned down by the withering fire from this single American soldier who refused to die. Finally, Audie ran out of ammunition. Only then did he climb down from the burning vehicle. His leg was wounded. He had been hit during the battle, but hadn't even noticed. He limped back to his men in the forest, still calm, still in command. "Get ready," he told them. "We're counterattacking." Then Audie led his men in a counterattack that drove the Germans back completely. For this action, this impossible, insane act of bravery, Audie Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration in the United States. The citation read, in part, "He stood on the burning tank destroyer, which was in danger of blowing up at any moment, and employed its .50 caliber machine gun against the enemy. His indomitable courage and his refusal to give an inch of ground saved his company from possible encirclement and destruction." Part 8. The End of the War and the Aftermath. After receiving the Medal of Honor recommendation, Audie was automatically assigned to duties behind the front lines. The Army didn't want to risk losing their most decorated soldier in the final months of the war. Audie hated it. He wanted to be with his men, but orders were orders. By May 1945, the war in Europe was over. Germany surrendered. Audie Murphy had survived. But at what cost? By the end of the war, Audie had been wounded 3 times. He had malaria, severe injuries, and psychological scars that would never fully heal. He had seen his friends die in his arms. He had killed over 240 enemy soldiers. He had done things that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The awards piled up. By the time he was discharged, Audie Murphy had earned 33 medals and decorations, including the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Star medals with the V device, 5 decorations from France, and 1 decoration from Belgium. He was America's most decorated soldier of World War II. When Life magazine featured him on the cover in July 1945 with the headline, "Most Decorated Soldier," actor James Cagney saw it and invited Audie to Hollywood. Audie Murphy, the poor sharecropper's son from Texas, was about to become a movie star. Part 9. Hollywood and the Struggle for Peace. Hollywood in 1945 was a different world. Audie Murphy, still only 20 years old, found himself surrounded by wealth, glamour, and people who had no understanding of what he had been through. At first, Hollywood rejected him, just as the military once had. He was too small, too quiet, not handsome enough by Hollywood standards. He slept in a gymnasium because he couldn't afford rent. He struggled to find work. But slowly, painfully, he began getting small roles. His first film was Beyond Glory in 1948. The parts were tiny, but Audie kept working. He took acting lessons, worked on his voice, learned how to move on camera. In 1949, Audie published his war memoir, To Hell and Back. The book was brutally honest about the horrors of war and became a bestseller. In 1955, it was made into a movie with Audie playing himself. The film was a massive success. Over the next 2 decades, Audie Murphy appeared in more than 40 films, mostly westerns. He became a genuine movie star, his face recognized across America. But behind the Hollywood smile, Audie was suffering. He had nightmares every night. He couldn't sleep without a loaded pistol under his pillow. He had what we would now call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But in those days, there was no treatment, no understanding. Soldiers were just expected to get over it. Audie struggled with depression, addiction, and insomnia. His marriages were troubled. He had money problems despite his fame. The boy who had survived poverty and war couldn't seem to find peace. But Audie never stopped trying to help his fellow veterans. He spoke openly about his struggles with PTSD, one of the first public figures to do so. He pushed for better treatment for veterans suffering from psychological trauma. He testified before Congress, demanding better care for those who had served.
Part 10. The Final Mission. On May 28, 1971, Audie Murphy was a passenger in a small private plane flying through heavy fog near Roanoke, Virginia. The plane crashed into the side of a mountain. Audie and everyone on board were killed instantly. He was 46 years old. Audie Murphy was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. His grave is one of the most visited sites in Arlington, second only to President John F. Kennedy's. Every day, people come to pay their respects to the small soldier from Texas who became a giant of American history. His headstone, at his own request, is plain and simple. No gold leaf, no special markings, just a standard military headstone like any other soldier. Because that's what Audie wanted. He didn't want to be treated as special. He wanted to be remembered as a soldier who did his duty. But Audie Murphy's legacy goes far beyond his grave. The Sergeant Audie Murphy Club was established in 1986 to honor non-commissioned officers who exemplify the values of leadership, courage, and dedication that Audie represented. The club has chapters across the entire U.S. Army. Hospitals, gyms, and monuments have been named in his honor. His story is taught in military academies. His name is still spoken with reverence by soldiers today. Conclusion: the meaning of courage. So what can we learn from the life of Audie Murphy? First, that courage is not the absence of fear. Audie was terrified many times in combat, but he fought through that fear to do what needed to be done. Second, that size and strength are not what make a warrior. Audie was small, underweight, and came from nothing. But he had something more important, an unbreakable will. Third, that true heroes are often the most humble. Audie never bragged about his achievements. He spoke openly about his struggles. He wanted a simple headstone. He understood that heroism is not about glory. It's about service. And finally, that the wounds of war don't always show on the outside. Audie Murphy survived the bullets and the bombs, but he never fully escaped the psychological scars. His willingness to talk about those struggles in an era when no one did helped pave the way for better treatment of veterans with PTSD. Audie Leon Murphy, the poor boy from Texas who was rejected 3 times by the military, became the most decorated American soldier in history. He killed over 240 enemy soldiers. He earned 33 medals and held off an entire German company while standing on a burning tank destroyer. But more than that, he showed us what true courage looks like. Not the Hollywood version, not the version from comic books or video games. Real courage. The courage to keep going when everything is against you.
The courage to stand your ground when every instinct screams at you to run. The courage to be honest about your struggles even when society tells you to be silent. That is the legacy of Audie Murphy, and that is why more than 50 years after his death, people still visit his grave, still tell his story, and still try to live up to his example. Because heroes like Audie Murphy don't come around very often, and when they do, we should never forget them. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story of bravery and courage, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Tomorrow we'll bring you another incredible story of a warrior whose life changed history. Until then, remember the words that Audie Murphy himself lived by. Never give up, never quit, and never let fear make your decisions.